Bonnie, thank you for
Rob,
being here.
thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be
I
talking
am
to you.
too. I'm so excited to hear where this is going to go because you're these great storytellers. So I'm sure we can go down a lot of rabbit holes. But let's start with the first story of your identity here on Nantucket.
My identity. Well, I sort of lost count, but I think I'm fourth generation.
Right. That's what I heard.
Believe it or not. My family is originally from Washington, D.C., and unbeknownst to my parents, both sets of families came from Washington to spend summers here. So I have, on one side, I have Willards who lived on Orange Street in town. And then I have Blocks, my maiden name, who were in Sconset. And so we eventually made our way to Sconset, where my grandparent Blocks were. So I come here as much as I possibly can. So my parents died. We grew up on Maury Lane in Sconset in a wonderful old house called Aloha. And it's for Sconset people, they'll know it. It has a long tunnel. And the house was built in 1900 by an actor named Harry Woodruff, who was one of the sort of lead actors of the Actors Colony out in Sconset. And he came out from Hawaii and loved the houses in Hawaii and built this upside down house. And so it sort of looks like a log cabin. And we had many, many happy childhood memories there. But when my parents died, about 9 years ago, we had to sell it. So I know a new family is in there and loving it. So that makes me happy. But I was lucky enough to be able to get a place in Sconset. So I get to spend as much time here as possible.
That's great. Give us a little snapshot of your professional life.
So, my professional life, I graduated from college and had no idea what to do. So someone told me I had to learn to type. I was highly insulted by that, to be honest with you. So I had to learn to type to get a job, and eventually made my way into public relations. I went to business school, ended up in advertising and television work. And I stopped after I had a couple of children, and eventually made my way into comedy. And that was after sort of a divorce, and I was sort of at a low point and thought, sort of tired of feeling sorry for myself. So I'd like to change it up. And what I decided to do was take a stand-up comedy class. And that launched me into a whole new world of creativity that truly changed my life, and made me look at the world in a completely different way. And it was an incredible gift. So I like to think that crises are gifts. I don't wish them on people, but they really are gifts. I think just making fun of myself, which is where it all started. It's like I could feel sorry for myself, or I could make fun of myself. So I did start in on the things that you hear in comedy clubs with like dating, after being married for almost 20 years, and being very tall. I'm almost 6 feet tall. So I think I have some line about being super tall, and I'm like the only woman who's looking forward to osteoporosis. So, I appreciate the laugh.
It's good.
But,
I'm giving it. It's a real
something
life.
Something like that. And I did. I think I had a joke about sex. Are you allowed to say sex? Talk about sex on this podcast?
Yeah, we'll beep it all later. Of course you are.
Oh gosh, I think I did a whole thing on just how terrified I was to date and losing my eyesight. And one of them was, going into a bathroom and getting ready, and how it takes me forever now because I don't know. I have so much to do. I used to brush my teeth, wash my face, go to bed. Now I have to, there's lotions and potions and creams and things, and I can't see anything anymore. I don't know which is the shampoo or the conditioner. And I can't believe I'm taking you back on this trip with me. And I remember going, I don't know why my teeth had turned so yellow, but it turns out I had been brushing my teeth with my self-tanner because I couldn't see it. Anyway, that gives you the gist of.
That's so. I would have been one of the people laughing.
Oh, I appreciate that. It was back in about 14 or 15 years ago that I went to something called the Moth in New York, and the Moth is a nonprofit based out of New York that was started in 1997 by a guy named George Dawes Green, who came from the South and missed telling stories. He felt like everybody was talking in sound bites. And he longed for telling stories again. So he invited people over, and it grew into an organization. So what I attended was something called the Moth StorySLAM in New York City. And people would get online to come in, and I saw people put their names in a hat. The place was packed. It was an old bar in the Lower East Side of New York. And I didn't know anybody there. And so if your name was pulled out of the hat, you got 5 minutes to share a story, and it's a competition. And the audience is the judge. And I watched this evening, I just will never forget it. These stories made me laugh, which sort of was the roots of comedy, which I loved. But some of them made me cry. All of them made me think. And the entire night was unbelievable, because in comedy, I like to think an audience sort of sits back and says, okay, make me laugh. But in a storytelling audience, they lean in and say, we are so rooting for you. Go for it. I'm here for you, because you're putting your heart out there on that stage. And that's what happened. I was leaning into these stories, and I suddenly started talking to all these people I'd never met before around me. And I thought, I have to have more of this. Continued to do it. And then one of my stories, the organization called me up and said, we'd like to work with you to have you put this on a main stage. And so a few months later, I found myself in Central Park in front of 4,000 people with the skyline of New York around me, just sharing a story. And it was an amazing thing.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
It was amazing. My creative juices are fed by other people's stories. And every single story I hear, of the many hundreds, I relate to in some way when they're well told. You know, the love for your grandfather, the desire to understand who you are in your story as you went back to Italy, to find out a little bit about who you were. I crave those things too. And I just like that. To me is like, it's a creative explosion. And it turns me on. I'm not someone who likes to get naked in public, candidly. I know you're shocked.
I don't know who does.
Just shocked by that.
Very rare.
But I did want to anchor it in something. And what I realized, and why it was such a big deal for me to participate in this photograph, which I did, was that when I grew up, I was very potty conscious. I'm almost 6 feet tall. I was like this big woman at age 12, and I was always uncomfortable with my body. And a friend of mine said, you got to do it, because after about 20 seconds, you don't feel naked anymore, because everyone is. And I did. I got up at 5:30 in the morning. I went out there, and he had us all line up. And we were all ages, all shapes and sizes, and we're all laughing and just having a wonderful time. And he has us go out to the left of Brand Point Lighthouse. And we're all lined up, and we're all holding up seaweed like the Statue of Liberty, looking out to the water. And Spencer Tunick, the photographer, is taking the picture from behind us. And suddenly we hear this wah, wah, and the steamship comes by. And everyone on the boat comes, of course, to our side, and we're in shock. They're in shock, and I just couldn't believe it. It was such a great moment, and I joke that people normally throw pennies when they go by Brand Point Lighthouse. Today, they are throwing dollar bills. It was so shocking, but I was like, where do I end this? And it was just simply that I'm really proud of myself. I did it.